Hello again, everybody. Dan John here from danjohnuniversity.com and danjohn.net. Welcome to episode number 78 of the danjohnuniversity.com podcast. We have a question from Marcus. I received a nice backpack for Rucking as a Christmas present. Well, Santa was nice to you. And I love it so far. I find it good for my roughly 5K rucks. Not bad. And I am currently using a 15 kilo weight in it, which is quite comfortable. When we get rid of the ice on the streets, I'll go to 20 kilos. However, if I remember correctly, you're not a fan of going heavier than 20 kilos when it comes to rucking. Actually, the tradition is 15 kilos. That goes all the way back to the Roman Empire. Once you start loading more than 15, you become very inefficient. Now, I know it's going to happen. Someone's going to post a picture of some Army Ranger, decked out in a 100 kilo kit, or, I have a good friend who was with one of the British groups, and he used to literally, he was 100 kilos. Long term, that's not a good idea. The reason I like 15, it's repeatable, it's doable. It's a number you can stick with a long time. 20 is also fine. In fact, I'll throw a 20 kilo backpack into a school backpack, because it sits so low on a school backpack, it just drags it down. That's not a bad way to go. But if you're rucking and you got the load more up here, you will start to find you're getting taken out by the pressure of those heavier weights. But your mileage may vary. Your kilos may vary. What is your recommended for progression with rucking? More weight, higher speed, longer distance, all three, something else? That's it exactly. What I like to do, once you've done rucking for a while, you begin to notice you just become too efficient. So that's when I move to heavy hands and I start using kilos. So start with 1 or 2 kilo weights in your hands, and as you walk, make sure you get some grip. And then, of course, we found from my friend Kevin Mass a while ago, ankle weights. Ankle weights makes rucking, well, according to my heart rate monitor, ankle weights do magic to your rucking. So if you get yourself a set of 2 kilo ankle weights, I wouldn't go much more. From American listeners, 5 pounds. Not much more than 5 pounds is something you want, because it really starts to impede your gait. G-A-I-T, gait. Not this kind, but this kind. English, tough language. And also, what would be a doable goal to work towards when it comes to rucking? A certain distance, weight perhaps? Well, now you're into something like at the Dan John Q&A forum at Dave Draper, there's a discussion of doing the rim-to-rim hikes in the Grand Canyon. What I would move to as a goal is like, there's a great little one-day hike here you can do in Utah called Mount Olympus. It's straight up and it's straight down. Honestly, it takes about 6 hours. And it's straight up and straight down. Something like that, and your ruck weight would be your lunch and your water, and I'd recommend a first aid and sun kit, some kind of sun stuff, sun hats, because you just never know when it all of a sudden going to turn to the desert up there. But I would prefer you do something like that as a goal than to do, 50 kilos for 10K or something. It's a much more, take a picture, you get to the top of the mountain, take a picture, you get to the lake, that kind of thing. I think that'll keep you doing this kind of stuff a lot longer than some arbitrary number I would just make up. And literally, I would just make it up. And Marcus, you seem like too good of a person for me to lie to. Everybody else, sure, but not you. Thank you. Okay, we have a question from Taylor. I'm considering adding some challenges a couple times a year to complement a solid park bench habit lifestyle. I'm with you 100% on that. What do you think of Tennessee Ernie Ford's song, 16 Tons? Some people say a man is made out of mud. A poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood and skin and bones. A mind that's weak and a back that's strong. Yeah, I like the song a lot. Let's find out what he was referencing there. Do you think a man could shovel 16 tons of coal in a working day? I think that was the standard, and I think that's why he sang the song. I'm thinking of having 16 tons of gravel delivered and attempting to load it into wheelbarrows. I'm just looking at that, Taylor, and I'm thinking you must be single. Just spitballing here, ballparking as we'd say. Yeah, that'd be great. I'm sure your neighbors will be very happy when you have 16 tons of dirt that you are moving back and forth constantly. No one will think that's strange. Listen, man, my neighbors, no matter where I live, always think I'm a nutcase, so I'm with you. That's a higher level, though. How would you train for this? Well, I'm no expert, but there is an exercise called the shovel lift. I've never been a fan of it because, it really, with that extended lever arm, it really puts a lot of stress on the back, so you have to do every single rep perfectly. Usually the low back gets sore for me first when doing more modest feats, unloading the dishwasher and picking up sticks in the yard. Isn't that funny? Yeah, picking up a sock or something like that has ruined more people's backs than all the lifting I've ever heard of. Also, any other historical challenges feats you would recommend? I've also been thinking about Teddy Roosevelt's 50 miles march in a day. President Kennedy did that. History shows he did this several times. I think that actually of all the things I've heard as a challenge, 50 miles in a day is pretty good. I've done the 100-mile bike thing. The challenge is under 12 hours, which I don't even know why people had to train for it. Hold your butt. Your butt needs to train for it. That was a mistake. 50 miles in a day, that would be, depending on what choice you make, that could be a very difficult day. My friend Dan Quinn did it one time famously on a dare, and he did it. God bless him. Those are all great challenges. They're outside of my world. Shoveling dirt back and forth, walking 500 miles in a day. That's all good. And if that's what you want to do, I'll be cheering you along all the way. I'll be here in my gym doing snatches, clean and jerks, front squats, and swings, and madly applauding you from my beautiful gym here in Murray, Utah. Hey, good luck on that. Okay, we have a very short question. Zachary, what's your opinion on the fan bike for conditioning? I think would be a better fan bike is when they actually had fans around it. You started to work out, people just start clapping back. Go, you got it, you got it. I'm thinking you mean the other kind, the kind with the fan. They're fine. Remember, all conditioning is specific. We could argue for hours about this, but I remember getting ready for high school football, American football, and I followed the program to the letter from a magazine called Letterman. And there was one day where I had to jog 5 miles, and it was mostly, it was a cross-country program that said football on it. Well, by the time football came around, physically I was probably in the best shape of my life. This would have been, the season would have been 73. By far, if we'd have done any tests out of conditioning out of one. But I wasn't in football shape. So conditioning is conditioning specific. When they did those VO2 tests years ago and they found out that basketball players have terrible VO2 maxes, it wasn't true at all. They put these basketball players on these fan bikes and then they tested them. Well, a lot of basketball players, aren't built for a typical bike, and I don't care how you modify it. I've stood next to Ralph Sampson, Mark Eaton, Walt Palmer, all 7'4", 7'2", 7'4" guys. In other words, they're this tall, and when they sit down, we're about the same height, but when they stand up, so they're not built for it, so they had terrible VO2 max times. So just remember, Zachary, almost all conditioning is specific. So fan bike is going to get you in shape for fan bike. Now, if you're a mountain bike racer, I could see you do it in the winter when you can't get out there. But just remember, you're not going to be in the kind of shape you think you are when you jump from the fan bike to the mountain bike. There's still some things you have to practice. So I'm a fan of anything for conditioning, absolutely anything. But, just be careful when you try to bring it over into other areas of life. Thank you, Zachary. It's nice to have a short question. We have a question from Charles, and this gets a little bit specific, but let's go. I've heard you talk about your hip replacements many times. How did you go about selecting your surgeon? The first time I was in California, I went to my doctor, who was my brother's doctor, and she said, how do you live with this? And then gave me a doctor's name. Basically, he was like Doogie Howser. I think he was 12 years old. And he did a nice job. The joke I always made was his mom dropped him off for the surgery. On my second one, I was very lucky because My doctor is actually someone I held when he was a baby. He's a family friend, known him his whole life, obviously. And he just moved back to Utah after specializing in hips for the professional hockey leagues. And he also works with, at the clinic he's at, the person's name on the wall has 5 Olympic gold medals. So this is a place that understands athletes. And so I lucked out with my surgeon, Dan Gibbs, Gibbs. Charles goes on. I was told a few years ago that I would eventually need to get my left hip replaced. Now it is severely impacting my day-to-day life. Walking hurts. Man, I've been there. I have to take 2 or 3 more days off after every squat or hinge heavy session. I'm kind of scared. Okay. Listen, I can't give medical advice. All I can say is, both times when I have woken up from that surgery, I have looked at my wife and I said, I can't believe how good I feel. And both times my wife has said, it's because you're stoned as shit on drugs. And I'd be like, no, I feel good. That for people who've never had bone on bone, and I was necrotic in the legs, I had bone on bone with dead tissue crushing each other. My friend Mike Rosenberg and I were just talking about trying to get around Chicago, in my inability to go from here to the fire hydrant, which is in front of my house, without stopping, wiping my head from sweat, from pain, and going on. Charles, I don't know what your financial situation, I don't know what your insurance is, but I feel very comfortable if you do find a surgeon and you do get the go-ahead, that you'll be emailing me not long after saying the same thing I've said every time. Why did I wait so long? That's not medical advice. That's Danny talking to Charles. That's heartfelt, not advice. Okay, so separate the two. Let me know what happens. Thank you, Charles. Okay, we've got a question from Andy. I'm 43 and I have recently followed and enjoyed an easy strength program for 6 weeks. Generally, I recommend 8 weeks, but it's the internet and no one seems to follow any rules, but thank you. I am now looking forward to change things up and want to add some muscle mass, more of a hypertrophy approach. I am considering whether to do mass made simple or something like Art Devaney's evolutionary approach to training. The hierarchical training is what he mentions, the 15-8-4 method. No rest between sets. It's minimal rest between sets. Devaney's, he talks about change. He uses machines, so he's doing changes the plates. Kettlebells, I'd have to slide over to the next one. If I'm using barbells, I'd have to add load if I only have one. Enough. I'm wondering whether the latter is more of a maintenance type program, whereas your mass made simply more effective and brutal. Yes, it is. He said brutal, and it is. But I also wear the challenge of being in my 40s in terms of progress, hormones, etc. What, in your view, would be a more suitable practical for me, please? Well, Andy, here's the thing about mass made simple. It's 6 weeks. And then you're done. If you don't make a change in your mass in those 6 weeks, like I always tell people, that's your fault. Devaney's approach is something that you could probably do, and I would even say should do, the bulk of your life. I have, in fact, I can read by your spelling here that you're probably English, British, Scottish, Irish. You're from the islands, okay? And Devaney's book there is called The Devaney Diet. Here in the States, it's called The New Evolution Diet. And he was supposed to go into great depth on all this, and he never did. But hypertrophy at your age is core. Hypertrophy and mobility, the free movement around the joints. So, Andy, if you can square out, chop out, tie up 6 weeks in a year at 43 and do mass made simple, I would say do that. Probably just one time. And the rest of the time, just do reasonable hypertrophy workouts, 3 days a week, whole body. If you're not on danjohnuniversity.com, now I'm starting to think people are crazy now who are in their 40s, go in and just plug in the basics and you'll get great workouts that'll last the rest of your life. So there, that I gave you a bit of an either or. If you can find the time to do the 6 weeks, do it. If you can't, and you have the equipment and you have the, you have the have. If not, I don't mind Devaney's approach or the traditional hypertrophy approach. Thank you. We have a question from Matt. I'm writing to ask about the path to becoming a kettlebell instructor. It's a pretty well-worn path. I think you'll be able to follow this one pretty easily. I'm a marketing professional with a passion for fitness. The word passion, pasios, comes from the Latin to suffer. Means you're willing to suffer for fitness. And by God, if you take it like I do, you suffer. And do most of my own training with kettlebells. I'm interested in becoming a kettlebell instructor so I can share my passion with others and help them reach their strength and conditioning goals. I think I would like to likely start as a side gig, but I would aim to eventually make it my full-time job. If I'll just give you some business advice straight up, that's very much what I did. I had this side gig as a strength coach, most of the time for free because there was no money in the 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts for the strength and conditioning world. There really wasn't. And so I just decided if I liked it so much, my passion, that I would do it for free, and I did. And I just would show up and coach people. And one day, kind of looked at the the annual income statement, when I'm getting ready to fire that off to the tax man, the IRS, and I'd realized that my little side hustle was far more important than my real job. So that's what I would tell you to do. Nassim Taleb says the same thing, and maybe it's Skin in the Game or Black Swan about the barbell model of money. And if I have that completely wrong, well, hey, it's a free podcast. I've done some research, and it seems like a good place to start without getting a personal training certificate. It would be good to get a personal trainer certification, if you need that. Many places you don't. Followed by a kettlebell-specific certification. I'm looking at an organization for the former and the Russian kettlebell certification for the latter. Do you have any thoughts or recommendations with regards to that plan? I wouldn't invest too much in a personal trainer certification. There's, many of my friends who are in the field say, you really just need a piece of paper. It doesn't matter who it's from. And so they bargain shop down to the one that's an online test and a $75 fee. And this is an issue, of course, we have in the field of training, is that the entry level is so low that a lot of people enter the field, and the career is so difficult, few people stick around over 18 months. So when you go to, I got to be careful about talking about specifics here, but certain workshops I teach at, I've been told by the person running it, in 18 months, the bulk of the people here will no longer be in the field. The lower the bar to entrance is, the more people show up. Having said that, is this something you love to do and you're doing it already, and it seems like you are, get involved. Because you're doing this as a side gig for a while, I would suggest, if you do, just, get the certification, if that's what you want. Personally, I still think it's going to a junior college, and many now have 2-year programs. I'm a big fan of that for a personal trainer, and as many degrees as you can get. But I would strongly circle that RKC kettlebell cert as a place to go. If you look, you'll see I teach a number of them. Now, the downside, of course, Matt, this year it's COVID. Again, it's still going on. So I can't guarantee I'll be at the places that we have scheduled, but, because of, who knows? I was told, I listened to somebody say that poof, it would disappear like a miracle and we'd forget about it. That's the slowest poof I've ever seen in my life. But I'm telling you this, do some volunteer coaching with some friends, people you meet, see how you do, see how you like it. Get the RKC, which I really think is valuable. The training for it helps a ton, and I think that's a good path. From there, and I'm going to be a little, here's what I think, Precision Nutrition, their basic nutrition certification. John Berardi's work is extraordinary, and I really like it a lot. The second thing is the RKC, the kettlebells. And then you probably want to get some kind of thing in the world of mobility, flexibility. And of course, I'm going to tell you Tim Anderson's original strength. I know that Tim does certifications. He also does so much online because, like all of us, we can't do our workshops anymore. But think of that, RKC, PN, OS. And I'm sure you can play with those numbers and come up with something kind of funny. I hope that helps, Matt. Good luck on this. A lot of the skills that you learned in marketing will help in the fitness world, but that'll be about a quarter of what being a personal trainer is about, marketing yourself. Another quarter probably would be retention, which is harder than you think. Another quarter would be the basics of business. I have an accountant and I have a whole bunch of people who help me with that, so I don't worry about that so much. And then the other part, of course, is the training and the programming. And you have to be careful that you keep all four of those in some kind of balance if you're doing a business. Now, if you're like me and you're basically a wandering strength coach, you don't have to worry about all that. But you'll also notice I take care of it my own way too. Matt, I hope that helped. And maybe we'll see it at a cert pretty soon. Thank you. Well, there you go, folks. Another episode finished. Remember, if you have questions, and I like answering the questions, email them to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com, and we'll do our best to answer each and every one. Thank you. Bye-bye.